Good morning, Comrade. You listen to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is your weekly Good Morning, Comrade. Very special guest today. We have the one, the only. He is an infectious disease doctor. He is also the founder of this humble station, WHIV. The one, the only, MarkAlain Dery. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how are you?
It's been a while since we had you on. I think it was like in the teeth of COVID since the last time we had you on the show.
I'm certain it was something like that.
Yeah, and we actually got to hang out in person for the first time in some time at a really special. I thought it was a really special event, the Grassroots Radio Conference. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, we so as you know, we've been on air now for 10 years.
Yeah,
this December 1st, which is pretty incredible. And
incredible.
40% of them were COVID years, which is also kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even think about it like that. So like when we started GMC, it was in 2019. So like 4 out of our 5 years have been COVID years.
Jeez, 2019. God, I couldn't even. I used to be such a good measure of time. I couldn't even tell you. I would have thought you guys started in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
But I can't even measure time.
Yeah.
So because it's, they're trying to, COVID kind of killed the annual GRC conference. GRC is Grassroots Radio Conference. There's a Grassroots Radio Consortium, also known as GRC, only just to confuse people because radio nerds are that way. The GRC Consortium has a GRC conference, and every year a different radio station does it. They, really are trying to kick it back off. During COVID, it kind of went dormant, and they just wanted to kind of get it started all over again. So they asked WHIV to sponsor it. Of course, people want to come to New Orleans to do that. It was your birthday, so happy birthday.
Yeah, my birthday was in the middle of it.
Yeah, so thank you for spending your birthday with us. We had some the way we designed it was in the mornings we were going to have progressive podcasters, YouTubers, streamers. So we had the first day we had the great Tom Hartman, as well as the amazing Monica Pierre. I may or may not have introduced Miss Monica Pierre as my professional crush.
You definitely did.
I may or may not have embarrassed her when I said that.
I'm sure she was flattered.
So then Monica, as for those of you who don't know her, she's a local Emmy Award-winning journalist who broke many, many glass ceilings along her career, working in newsrooms, just being the first of many, notwithstanding the fact that she's female working in male-dominated newsrooms. She has a great story, and she really focused on what her new projects are moving forward, as she's kind of retired from journalism per se. She's retired from doing regular shows. And now one of the great things that she's doing is mentoring women, especially women of color, through to provide pathways in careers of broadcasting. So she was incredible. And then after that, on that first opening day, we had the mayor of New Orleans come, and she just gave a rockin' sock'em, like just amazing just introduction. She hailed the 27th, your birthday, September 27th, the New Orleans Grassroots Radio Conference Day. That was kind of a big deal for us. It was a big deal for a lot of other radio stations, that they saw the local involvement with the local mayor not only being there, but really she brought the fire and brought the passion. So she was really incredible. So then we
also had some local entertainment as well.
Right. So then the day ended with Mardi Gras Indians. We were very cautious when we got married Jeff, you were at our wedding? Were you at our wedding? Or
Nope.
yeah.
Nope.
So, we probably didn't know each other at that time. I'm certain. But when we got married, Leon and I, being good progressive libs, with good progressive liberal families, coming from California, when our California family saw Mardi Gras Indians, they bugged out. Now, why did they bug out? Because you can't wear stuff like that in California if you do not belong and are a card-carrying tribe member. That maybe came out a little bit pejoratively. I apologize. Like, if you are not a member of of a native tribe, you cannot wear headdresses. And really, what it was meant to do was, all the chic kids that are going down to Coachella wear these Native American headdresses and stuff like that. So they wanted to stop that. So our families bugged out when they saw Mardi Gras Indians, and then it wasn't until later that we learned about this. So when we were planning this, we were on a Zoom call. When we said that we had monies to bring in Mardi Gras Indians, everybody's face kind of. The word Indian in New Orleans is a very common word. In the rest of the country, the word Indian is not used. So the way it just rolled off our tongue when we said Mardi Gras Indian, they were like, "What?" And then Leon and I were like, "Oh, right, we did this with our wedding." So what we did
Our
is
whole history with all of our traditions, we need to like lay it out for people.
We made sure that part of their time was going to be spent explaining to people who and what Mardi Gras Indians were. And this tribe that we usually work with, they were the same folks that did our wedding. They usually work with children, so having kids there, young people.
Oh, that little guy was really cool.
Yeah, his name is Lil Chief.
Lil Chief.
Lil Chief, who took the microphone and spoke about why being a Mardi Gras Indian is so important to him. And he
He's about 8 years old.
Yeah, 8 years old,
and just like performing like you'd never believe,
Yeah, it was amazing. And so the following day, we had the session opened up with Sam Cedar, progressive talk show host of the Majority Report. We had David Sirota from Lever Time, which is his independent media outlet, and also probably best known for writing the screenplay for the movie called Don't Look Up. And then we ended with Wajahat Ali, and Wajahat is a well-known author and speaker, individual. He's first-generation American like I am. His family's from Pakistan, mine is from Morocco, but he grew up in the East Bay, and he wrote this great book called go back to where you came from. And he's like, I'm from the East Bay. You gonna pay my rent? What are you gonna do? He lives actually somewhere where you live, Jay.
He lives in Alexandria. We had talked with him for a minute. He's from Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
He was talking about his flight, that he was complaining about his flight, and I was like, I drove down, bro.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, you guys better say hello to me, man. I came on Coach.
Yeah, Coach.
Dude, it was Southwest. I'm like, Coach, what did you send him on? I'm like,
it's all Coach.
He's coming to the Grassroots Radio Conference. What are you expecting? Like a first class ticket? I will say, I won't name the individual, but I will say there was an individual that a very well known progressive speaker, who was really kind of one of my first choice people, to be honest with you. And he came back to me. So nobody asked for any money, and nobody and this individual asked for $7,000 speaker fee and first class.
Oh, okay. Where is he gonna get that from?
I was like, I'm like, I don't know if you saw the Grassroots in the Grassroots Radio Conference. I'm like, that is way. I mean, like, I'm like, hey, buddy, the best I could do are coach with Southwest, because we're paying with our own personal points. So I could send you a Southwest and a hotel room. And if you really need a speaker's fee, that's going to need to come down pretty substantially. And
how about we put a tip jar out? How about that?
It was a pretty lefty dude, and I was a little surprised by his ask. But we all have our needs, and I don't begrudge anybody for that. But so Sam Cedar really kind of spoke about he was like, the theme of the conference was using our platforms to protect democracy. It's obviously right before the
He
election.
he graded America's democracy and he gave it like a C plus or
C
something like that. I'm
minus
like,
or yeah.
like
So
this guy's a pretty easy grader. I'm a former teacher, and I'd be giving him a lot lower grade than that.
so he started off. He's like, when MarkAlain called me and he asked me to do this, I kind of cringed when he said what the theme of the conference was, and I cringed that he cringed. I did not know this. Like, I love Sam Cedar. I've listened to him since Air America days, and since Janine Garofalo days. Like, to hear that I made him cringe with my theme made me cringe, and I thought he was going to come back to, but I was just joking. He never really did, but I did understand where he was coming from, and it was a very strong point.
Because because Democrats are always saying like this is now the time, the most important election of our lifetime, where we can vote to defend democracy or whatever the hell, and like that doesn't mean that democracy doesn't have to be defended insofar that it actually exists. This is sort of like my sort of interpretation of what's going on there, like in his head at least. But like
Right.
well, the problem is, I guess, not you or what you came up with, but like the fact that that language is so like it's so like I don't know, used very promiscuously, I suppose you could say, to push forward the Democrat agenda. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, I think his point, which I thought was a fair one, was, and I ended up, making the joke, which I will make in a moment. His point was a fair one in which, yes, we have a democracy in which we select presidents through an electoral process, which is inherently unfair and was a gift that was given to the South so that the South would join the Union. They knew that the only way the South would ever win was through a process of an electoral college. And now the point that Sam made, and as soon as he started making that point, I saw where he was going, was that the last, 3 or 4 Republican presidents or elections, minus Bush 2004.
04. But
Right.
Trump, Bush and Trump. So that's the 2 Republican presidents over the past 20 years.
Right. And before that was there Daddy Bush. Did he win through electoral?
It was they had a popular majority for that one, I believe.
Okay, so what you had were, you had those two presidents who ended up putting in a majority of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That now eventually, between Chevron doctrine that has been removed, which we haven't even started to see what the effects of that are going to be, those are going to be disastrous. And of course, the low-hanging fruit is going to be the Dobbs decision. So what we have now, so he started grading. He's like, electoral college, that brings us down to like an A- democracy.
Still pretty generous, if you ask me.
What's that? Yeah, it's
an
easy grader. Easy grader. Then, by the time he was done, explaining how terrible our democratic process really is, we do have a democracy. We have a system of government that favors the rich, and will always favor the rich, because the country was founded on gaslighting. All men are created equal except for the black people. Everybody can vote except for women and the black people. It's just right. I mean, it's just it's been, America the gaslit is exactly who we are, and that's what we have been. And that was the point that he was making. So when I got up there, I was like, you're right. Next time I have one of these Grassroots radio conference, Sam, I will rename our theme to using our platforms to protect our C- immunodeficient democracy. So I got him to laugh. I appreciated that. Sirota got up there. Sirota was very funny. Sirota was really talking about independent media not talking in a vacuum. And I think that was a very strong point that he was making. And the point essentially is, how do we reach out beyond our bubble? I mean, you and I are talking. The people that are probably listening to this, the people who will listen are, and should we make the announcement that we're going to be on election night?
Yeah. So on November 5th, we're going to have a very special event. Go ahead, take it away.
We're going to be broadcasting 4 hours on WHIV from 6:30 to 10:30 Central Standard Time on the night of the election. As we watch the returns, it'll be hosted by Jeff and myself, and there'll be lots and lots and lots of special guests. I'm going to see if we can get in Wajahat, David Sroda, Tom Hartman, Sam Cedar. I mean, I know they're going to be doing their own, but would they dial in? So I'm going to try to see if we could do that. I have to think through the technology for us to do that. Maybe we do it through this. I don't know, because we're going to be doing it live on air. So I don't know, but
there's definitely a way we can do it. I'm almost certain there's a way it can be done. Now, like putting the guest list together for all that's going to be a whole lot of fun. Also, there was a lot of interest from people from our very own station who were interested in participating in it as well, and also a couple of small similar stations that are across the country, which is really great. The friend, the young lady from Portland, really kind of put that nugget of this idea into my head to kind of push for this, and it was a really
from KBOO.
Yeah,
Lisa
from
Lovelace
KBOO.
from KBOO.
Yeah, Lisa Lovelace. Yeah, she was really cool.
She's great. And then lastly, Wajahat Ali was the final speaker, and I think he brought down
he was
the
doing his
house.
10 minutes of stand-up, him.
Yeah, he was supposed to, everyone was supposed to speak for 20 minutes. He spoke for 40, and he had the audience in the palm of his hand. He was so funny, told great stories, and just basically reminded us that we do live in the end in a white supremacist country.
Sure.
And what we're seeing certainly with this election now is that they are doing anything to hold on to it. And of course, cheating will be a major part of that. As I was telling you off air, I voted today, and I had no hesitation to vote for the vice president. I held my nose a little bit because I know that she's going to continue with the same policies with Gaza. I know that we're going to see an invasion in Lebanon, and we're going to continue to bomb 43,000 dead Gazans, and that's not even counting people who probably died from starvation, who died from diabetic ketoacidosis, who died from lack of dialysis, who died from sepsis, who died from cholera. Doesn't count all the new children that now have polio, which was completely preventable illness.
It is insane that polio is back in the world right now. Like, how did that happen? Only
brought to you by the United States of America.
Well, yeah.
Brought to you by weapons that all have our names,
taxpayer
dollars on there. And so let me sum up just one thing real quickly. Let me say, we wrapped, the radio conference was great. We couldn't have had a better experience. 200 people really saying that they really enjoyed it. We wrapped up Saturday night with me interviewing Chris Rose, which was really great.
Barrel laps. He was doing his Chris Rose thing.
He was doing his Chris Rose. It got a little awkward when he was talking about being obsessed with Britney Spears at 14. I quickly got off of that.
Yeah, let's move it on.
Yeah, I was like, let's move this on, Chris. We don't. That's the past. We want to put that behind us. That there's only 6 people in this audience of 200 that know that. Now there's 194 people who now know that. They don't need to know that. Let's move on. So the conference itself was really successful. The final day was kind of really highlighted by Scott Galante, the attorney for WHIV, and also has a show really talking to us about founder syndrome and what happens in a founder syndrome like situation, which is something that Leon and I are trying to avoid happening with WHIV. So thank you.
I need to reach out to him about coming on this show just to sort of like hear some legal analysis from him. He and I talked for a brief period, and he was a really nice guy.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to sit and talk about GRC. It was a great experience.
It was a blast. And one of the cool things too, I can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, but in the middle, like it was at lunchtime. Like I was not in the building. I was like, there was no.
Oh right, yeah. It was the march.
There was it was a women in trades march that was just happened to be going down the street right next to what we were doing. So like me and a couple of other folks from various stations who were like, well, let's go check this out. What's going on? And just got to see all these incredible badass trade union women, like literally from the building trades, just kind of like marching down St. Charles Avenue, which was really cool.
It was super cool. Super cool.
I got so many stickers from them, just like handing them.
Oh, really?
So I had stickers from all the stations that we had our sticker table at, and then I got a bunch of trade union stickers too.
That's really cool.
Big sticker weekend for me.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, you're listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. Good morning, Comrade. GoodMorningComrade.com. MarkAlain, Dery is here on the show. There are some incredibly exciting happenings in the city of New Orleans right now. One of them that we definitely wanted to make a point to talk about, which is the LCMC nurses who are now in this. These are the ones that they've got their union, and now they're engaging in contract negotiations on Thursday, the 25th. I'm sorry, the 24th. They
20,
are
25th.
Friday the 25th. I beg your pardon. They are set to have a 1-day strike. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. At least you know what, you're right. I thought it was Thursday the 24th, but the what I'm looking at right now says the 25th. So either
Sure.
Thursday or Friday. So the LCMC registered nurses, which is mostly University Medical Center, are planning to strike primarily due to ongoing issues with contract negotiations and patient safety concerns. And with respect to contract negotiations, they've been in contract negotiations since March of 2024 without reaching an agreement. The nurses claim that LCMC management have delayed negotiations, postponed bargaining sessions, and refuse to meaningfully respond to nurses' proposals on key issues. Before I continue, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to kick it back to you, Jeff. Delayed negotiations, postponed bargaining sessions, and refuse to meaningfully respond to nurses' proposals. Are these new issues that happen when people are trying to negotiate, or is this the standard
Bro, it
way
happens all the
that
time.
corporations? Yes,
It happens all the time.
This should not come as a surprise to us, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, one of the things that management does do when it comes to fighting, for when workers come together, they form their union and they fight for a contract, which, I mean, critically in this, obviously it includes provisions for the workers, for their hours, for their staffing and things like that, which is part of safety. But like, a key understroke of this is the safety of the patients. And I mean, maybe you can straighten me out on this, but like, it really does kind of make sense to me. Well, it does and it doesn't, right? You would think a priority of the management of these hospitals would take patient safety into consideration, such like this. So why would they be standing in the way of these things that are being articulated by their own employees, by their own workers the people that are in the trenches every day working with these
Well,
working
let
with
me
these
let me let,
patients.
let me ask you that then. So
Mhm,
before we go on, let
mhm,
me ask you this. This is a common tactic that we see bosses or C-suites do. Do they do this because one, it's just like just put delay, delay, delay. We've seen that has worked for Trump amazingly well. I mean, he's never been held accountable. I mean, yes, just recently with the sexual abuse lawsuit, he's been held accountable. With obviously with the cases against New York City, he's being held accountable. But really, I mean, he's still running for office. Nothing seems to hurt him.
mhm,
So my question to you is: this is a common tactic that's delay, 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 right?
mhm.
And then in delay, delay, delaying, are they just trying to play out the clock? What clock are they trying to play out? And also, why wouldn't they want to interact with the unions? Like,
Mhm,
what is holding them back? Do they just feel like when you're at that level of
mhm.
in a C-suite office that it's your way or the highway, and they just
Well,
don't care what they have to say?
so there is that is
Like,
probably the biggest
explain the
part of it all.
dynamics.
So I would actually sort of like that. There is a component of this that is like the patient safety and the staffing and the lean models of sort of like staffing that are implemented are done to save money, and money is a key component here. But you are right when you say that, like, the my way or the highway, like, there is a certain amount of, like, I'm your dad and you're gonna listen to me no matter what, and they will cut their noses off to spite their own faces to do that. if that's what you're asking.
Right. This is my house, my
Yeah, they're
rules.
trying to establish the dynamic of I'm in charge and laying down the law. You listen to us. You don't get you uppity workers don't get to dictate what's going on here. It's our rules.
So doesn't that define perfectly well the whole purpose of a union?
Exactly why you need a union, yes, because without the union, there is no ability to push back against that mindset. Exactly right.
Yeah. There are a lot of, it's in the other countries, industrialized countries, unions aren't really necessary because the laws are in place that make this sort of behaviors
It's more of a
illegal.
socialized,
Yeah,
structural.
yeah.
Mhm,
It's and this is why co-ops are so important
mhm,
as well. So, but by co-ops, I'm talking about obviously employee co-ops where
mhm,
employees are actually able to make decisions as well.
mhm.
But we were talking about patient safety. So there's three types of patient safety issues. So they're advocating for three improvement categories that are related to patient safety. The first one, I'll just give the categories first. The first one is workplace violence prevention. The second one is safe staffing. And the third one is legal protection. So let me go over each one of those. For workplace violence prevention, nurses are demanding a comprehensive workplace violence prevention program for all areas of the facility. In the past, they have reported instances of lethal weapons being brought into patient care
At
areas.
the hospitals, yeah, weapons at hospitals. I mean, it's at Tulane, right?
Um, well, there has been, but these are at University Medical Center.
Oh, university. I beg your pardon.
Right. This is University Medical Center. And so the other thing we have to remember is that this state has recently also become a conceal and carry state. In other words, you don't need to have a permit to conceal your weapon and you can carry it. Now, I think hospitals may be off limits, or I think because a business can demand that you not bring weapons in, that doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't going to be bringing weapons to the hospital. But there are a number of reports where nurses are finding examples of weapons being found in patient belongings, in the bed or what have you. Now, I will say this: I would imagine, not exclusively, but I would imagine a lot are like me as a physician. I'm not a gun owner. I've held a gun before. That was under duress because my boss insisted that I go shooting with him. Otherwise, he would fire me. He was joking, but I went shooting with him, and and like I don't know anything about guns. I don't want to know anything about guns. And in fact, if I could reverse the Second Amendment, I would. I think guns are horrific, and I think that they have caused a significant amount of problems, and they continue to terrorize our society to this day. Look at children who have to go through active shooting drills while they're in school. So that's the
The worst.
ultimate.
As a
That's
school
terror.
teacher, as a school teacher who has gone through those trainings, oh my freaking god, dude! Like they are no fun. Like
Of
it's really
course. And
horrible, just like having to deal with children who are crying because they think that somebody
right,
brought a gun to their school.
right. And also think about this. My wife sent me a kind of it was a clip of either a Facebook or a Twitter post that said, I was talking to my daughter about her active shooter drill today, and my daughter said, "But what happens if I take the best hiding spot, and then that means that another kid can't get it, and
Yeah,
then they get shot and killed?" Like, no, children should not be thinking about this.
yeah.
Like, why are we demanding that children? And you know what makes our politicians just so reprehensible is that they know this is happening and they are actively choosing not to do anything about it.
Mhm.
So, and so as I was saying, as healthcare professionals, I'm imagining that there are a lot of nurses that are like myself that don't know much about guns, don't really need to know anything about guns. Why would guns ever be in our lives? And so to find guns on your patient's person and their belongings or what have you just makes you realize no. And the one thing about guns that we know more than anything else is that they go off, and we've heard a number of cases of the kid who's playing with a gun and shoots out their eye accidentally or whatever. There should be no weapons in a hospital. And that's what the nurses are advocating for.
Mhm.
The second thing that they're talking about is
Oh,
staffing.
really quickly, let's just pause at the bottom of the hour for station ID to listen to Update HIV. It's LP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. MarkAlain Dery is our guest on the show, and we are talking about the nurses' strike that is planned to happen on Friday the 25th with the LCMC nurses, who are all members of National Nurses United. Please continue, MarkAlain.
So the second thing is safe staffing. So what they're advocating for is safe staffing. So this is also, remember, all of this, they're not asking for higher wages, right? The first one was workplace violence prevention. The second one is safe staffing. The third one are legal protections. So the safe staffing is basically what happens is that when you go to a hospital and you're cared for by a nurse, you're one of 4, 6, 8, 12 patients that he or she, I'll just say they, are caring for that day, that shift, that day, that night, or what have you. And when you're in the intensive care unit, usually nurses are, it's 1 to 2. And if it's a very, very critically ill patient, it's usually 1-to-1 ratios. Now, it's not realistic to have 1-to-1 ratios on the floors, on the regular hospital floors. But there's a lot of studies that have been done that show 1-to-4 to 1-to-6 ratios are likely the safest for both the nurses as well as the patients, because the nurses are still held accountable for if they miss something, if they don't do something correct or whatever. And they have 12 patients they're supposed to care for. They need to make sure that vitals are taken on time. Like for any shift that a nurse comes on and does, they have to create what their next 12 hours is going to be based on the number of patients. Patient A needs to take Coumadin at 8 p.m. Patient B needs to have vitals at 8:15. Patient C needs to have their metoprolol taken at 8:30. All the way down the line. And where does the nurse have an opportunity to have a break, have an opportunity just to kind of relax, because being on for 8 to 12 hours with that level of intensity is asking for a lot. So not only is it better patient care from the patient's perspective, but it's better patient care from the nurse's perspective as well. So that's what they're asking for. And this is something that if you look at nurse strikes throughout the entirety that strikes have happened probably in the last 20 years or so, it's all because of inadequate staffing that will ultimately negatively affect patient outcomes. So,
Yeah. I was just
anything?
say, as a again, former school teacher, that reminds me of why one of the things that activate school teachers is that, like, classroom size, which is sort of an equivalent,
Yes,
not
classroom
necessarily
size
like
is
a
a
one to
great
one equivalent.
equivalent.
Yeah, necessarily like a 1-to-1 because the numbers are different, but like the idea of you're responsible for managing X number of people and their needs and all of the things that they need to. I mean, in a hospital sort of setting, it's a lot more of an immediately dire medical type situation. But the essentially, like, what is the ratio of the amount of people that this person is going to be responsible for their lives? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jeff, I think it's a great point that you're making in that I think what teachers have advocated for in the past has been smaller classes. And I think that's about as best analogy as you can get to, because that's what nurses are advocating for. Of course, the schools are going to try to put as many students into a school size as possible. And the teachers are going to push back, and the executives at hospitals are going to try to give nurses as many patients as possible. And what we're seeing the union doing here, what we see the nurses doing through their union, is that they're pushing back and they're demanding that they have smaller ratios. In fact, to be honest with you, that hospital's so big that they built out that a
Talking
third
about
of the
university.
university still hasn't been opened.
Mm-hmm.
They way overbuilt that hospital. Way overbuilt that hospital. So anyway, so the last thing to think about are legal protections. This is the third and final thing that they're asking for. The nurses are seeking legal protections against retaliation for reporting unsafe conditions, and that to me is the safest, like that's the most reasonable thing in the world. If you know how I just came back from LA, where I was downtown at a convention, a medical convention. I stayed at the hotel right across the street from the convention center, so I was right downtown the entirety of the time I was there. And there were signs everywhere that say, "If you see something, say something." Well,
Yeah.
here the nurses are seeing something, but they're being muted and they're not able to say something. And all they are just seeking legal protections against retaliation.
Hmm.
They want to report unsafe conditions. They should certainly have the right to do that. And the couple of things that they're looking for, really more than anything else, is they're looking for recruitment and retention. The nurses
Hmm.
have proposed measures to improve recruitment and retention of staff. And this is likely in response to staffing shortages and high turnover rates. This is another reason why the hospital is not open. A third of the hospital hasn't even been open yet. And then lastly, union recognition. While the UMC nurses have voted to unionize in late 2023, making them the first private sector hospital in Louisiana that's unionized, they're
Let's
still
go.
fighting. They're still fighting for their first contract.
Yeah.
The strike is seen as a way to pressure LCMC to engage
Mhm.
more seriously in negotiations. It's scheduled to last one day, as we know. They've emphasized that the primary concern is patient care, whereas LCMC, for its part, has stated that patient care will not be interrupted during the strike. So that kind of gives you a good summary of what's happening.
Yeah, and again, I think that it is worth like stopping because you mentioned that this is the first private sector nurses union that's ever been formed in Louisiana. That is an absolutely historic moment, but that is not the end of everything. It's the beginning of something. It is beginning of this fight for patient safety and respect for these nurses. So, I mean, obviously like shouts out to the nurses. We are, I can definitely speak for this program. We are 100% behind you guys. We are with you, and uh there will be more to come from this as this fight continues and we're in their corner.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I hope that I hope that the folks at LCMC take these concerns seriously, and I hope that they engage in good faith
Hmm.
with the
Totally.
nurses. What it seems like on the surface, what's been reported in public, has been that they just been using the same tactics that we've seen C-suites ever use. Certainly, we saw that with Starbucks. We see it with just anybody. They just
Hmm.
don't take you seriously. They're going to delay. They'll put a date on the calendar for like 4 weeks or 5 weeks from now. They cancel that appointment. They put another one on the
Give the run
calendar.
around.
Right. It's just constant delay. And I seriously hope that moving forward, we do see good faith negotiations that occur.
Yeah, and we can definitely talk about the sort of structure of the sort of American medical system and how it is just built on this completely for-profit model that's just designed to create this, chasing the dollar, and providing the service is just a means to that end of chasing those dollars. I mean, that's a capitalism problem probably more than anything, right?
Well, I mean, yes, but it doesn't have to be like this. I mean,
No, you're
you
right about
know,
that.
we look how close Bernie got in 2020. And we got Biden because Bernie was so close. And the fear was that Bernie would probably institute some form of Medicare for all, or at least
Mhm.
through the Affordable Care Act, have a public option, at least.
Yeah.
But they are frightened for that because they know good and well that a public option
Mhm.
is the cheapest, most
It'll
effective
drive down the
way,
prices, yeah.
yes, of getting good, safe, effective healthcare. And
Available for everybody, which is
right.
key.
And industrialized countries around the world, healthcare, for the most part, and this is very general, is about
Mhm.
$5,000 a year per person, right? $5,000 per year per person. So you are taxed $5,000 per year per person in industrialized countries, right? France, Japan, Spain, Scotland,
Germany.
what
Mhm.
have you, Germany. In the US, we pay double that. We pay $10,000 per person per year, roughly speaking, of course. Where is that delta going? Where is that $5,000? If it costs $5,000 per person to run a system in Germany and Scotland and Canada, wherever, if it costs about $5,000 to run that system, why are we paying $10,000 and why are we paying twice as much and our outcomes are worse? Right? And that's all because the extra money we're paying just goes into profits. And Medicare for all will never come to the United States as we know it right now. There's no way, I voted today. I did vote for the vice president, but I'm also very, very well aware that at one point she was for Medicare for all and before she wasn't. And she will never, ever revert, flip-flop back to that position. That will never, ever happen. We will never have a Medicare for all program here in this country because of a lack of insurance, of a national health insurance. 64,000 people die a year of deaths that don't need to be had because they're unable to see physicians, or by the time that they are able to see a clinician, the disease process has moved so far ahead.
Preventative care is barely even a thing. I mean, it was not a thing at all prior to, the Affordable Care Act, which is, again, something that I have a lot of critiques of in terms of how it implemented a system. However, there were incentives to provide preventative care in that, which is one of the better parts. That plus the expansion of Medicaid.
And just to remind everybody, the Affordable Care Act, as we know it, before it was called the Affordable Care Act, it was called the Heritage Foundation Plan.
Right, exactly.
Who gave it to Romney when he was the governor of Michigan, of Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, yeah.
And then it was called Romney Care. And then the Democrats just basically took a copy of it, a la Alec. They took out all the parts that referred to Romney Care. They put Obamacare there, and
they did a search and replace in Microsoft Word.
Yeah, Clippy must have helped them out, and so, we will never, unfortunately, have a not-for-profit healthcare system. Not if Trump wins, forget about it. That's that. And the Affordable Care Act is gone, by the way. Project 2025 is as bad as it seems. One of the things that we talked about at the Grassroots Radio Conference too, Jeff, I don't know if you were there for it, was what happens if Trump wins. The FCC goes away. That's one of the federal offices they're going to get rid of, and they're going to bring the office of the FCC underneath the White House or into the White House, or they're going to just eliminate it altogether. And conversations like this will be banned. They will be banned. Criticizing the government under a Trump administration will be banned. And we really have to start thinking, what happens to our radio programs where we are able to talk as freely and openly as we have in the past.
Right. And have them take place that on platforms that are truly independent, as opposed to ones that are owned by billionaires like Facebook. Twitch is owned by Amazon. YouTube is owned by Google. Twitter is Elon Musk. I mean, who owns WHIV? The nonprofit Nocita that runs it. I mean, that's what it is.
Nonprofit.
It's run by
a nonprofit owns it.
Yeah. So that is one of the key things, because those I guess I'm not exactly sure what the regulation rules when it comes to the FCC are, or what they would be like when it comes to the other platforms. But there's definitely a touch with those platforms between. We're heavily regulated by the FCC on community radio.
And that, what's going to happen is, how many times have we said that? The closing of news outlets that criticize the president or the former president now. I don't know. It's where do we today is what Monday,
or even like billionaires. Like, remember 15. What happened with remember what happened with Gawker and Peter Thiel back in what 2000 and was 2015 or something
8
like that.
or 15, yeah, I guess. I don't even remember.
2014, 2015, when they ran a kind of a item that essentially outed him. You can debate whether or not that was appropriate or not, but he essentially like got his revenge by funding a defamation case by, of all people, Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan, and his God help us sex tape. Like, what a crazy world we live in when that's like the thing that can bring down a media outlet.
Yep. Yep. I mean, remember, the business of America is business.
Yeah. Exactly right. You're listening to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. One of the things I want to talk to you about, because again, I'm talking to you from Virginia, and I definitely do try to keep my finger on the pulse of what is going on in Jeff Landry's Louisiana. It does definitely feel like I was there for I was there my entire life, and I remember the vibes during the Louisiana legislature were never exactly good, even at the best of times. But right now, it just seems like there's a pall that is sort of like looming over the entire state because of this, because of this, like, extremely aggressive, like, I mean, I'm not so sure how competent he is at his ability to sort of implement these horrible programs that he's
I think
definitely
he's
pushing
I think
for.
he's competent. I
Mhm.
think he could do it.
Okay, but yeah,
I
let's talk
think
about Jeff Landry's Louisiana and like what is the horrors
so.
on the
This
menu up there
this
over there?
brings up a bigger question, which
Mhm.
is what Landry is doing in Louisiana is no different what Abbott is doing in Texas, what
DeSantis in
DeSantis is doing in
Florida and
Florida,
many other states.
Mississippi,
Oh yeah.
Arkansas. It goes down the list. These states all have poor outcomes, health outcomes, education outcomes, housing outcomes, any indicator. These they there was just on the happy index, these are people who have are the least happy individuals in the country, and what we're seeing are brain drains happening out of
Mhm.
these states. So I want to turn around and ask you the question, and this I have a feeling will be something that we will talk about endlessly and repeatedly over the course between now and then through our election coverage, which is, why does our country hate their citizens so much? Why is it that they don't, like, they literally, like, the example I give is this: we teach creationism in science classes in the state of Louisiana because we say, well, it's a theory of evolution. If it's a theory, therefore there should be another understanding of creationism. No, the science is pretty settled.
Mhm.
Evolution is a thing, and that's what we need to teach children: critical thinking. And when we talk about abstinence only sexuality education, Leon and I published a paper showing this is one of many, many hundreds and hundreds of papers that show that abstinence only versus comprehensive sexuality education, abstinence only is disastrous for
Mhm.
kids. And I believe it also fuels the rape pandemic that we see in colleges because kids never really learned consent, but they're still
I didn't even learn what
have
sex is.
yeah, well, they got YouTube now, so
Yeah.
I think they know what sex is. I think they just don't know what healthy,
Mhm.
consensual sex is, and so you
Mhm.
end up with all these young men who are boys and they've got phones in their pockets and they have other things in their pockets that are constantly,
Mhm.
just driving them. And there hasn't been voices that teach young people how to manage that appropriately because we insist on waiting until you're married till you have sex. One of the things that
Mhm.
Leon and I published a paper on, which is linking abstinence only with rates of HIV. So states that have higher rates of abstinence only in their schools have highest rates of abstinence have highest rates of HIV infections as well. That should be a no-brainer. Also, with that came teenage pregnancy because kids are still going to have sex regardless. If we're going to put a kid into a car we insist that they get a driver's license and we teach them how to drive. If we give a kid a gun in the military, we're going to insist that we teach them how to use that gun in the military before they actually go out and try to fire it. But when it comes to sex, we don't care. So the ultimate question I ask you is this: is why? Why is it that our government just isn't into us? Why is it that they set up Cancer Alley? They know it's Cancer Alley. They know that people are ultimately going to get injured, but it's not going to be on their watch, and they just go ahead and do it. This is what Landry's, Louisiana, which has always been done in small increments like this, are now going to be very, very, very large leaps. And the thing that scares me the most, Jeff, is that they're going to start. One is they're going after the Constitution. Why do they want a constitutional convention? I believe them at their word when they say they're not going to add anything. I actually do believe them. But I think what they are going to do is remove. And the thing that they're going to remove is they're going to remove constitutional protections for health, and they're going to remove constitutional protections for education. They're going to turn them into mandates, because every year they can actually change mandates. They can work on the mandates. They can weaken every year. They can weaken these mandates
and make them value what they want the vision of Louisiana, their vision of Louisiana, to be.
Which is what? Okay, so let me ask you, which is what?
Which is, I mean, right now, ultimately, like the grand, I mean, like all of the all of the social stuff, like, is a means to an end. All of these attacks on trans people, all of these attacks on abortion, all of these attacks on even gay people and education and all this other stuff is a means to an end to create a state that is essentially only primarily in service to the oil and gas industries. And what the whole point of creating a less educated public is to, I mean, honestly, the brain drain part that you kept talking about earlier, that's a side effect that's not even necessarily undesirable for when it comes to that, unless those people who are being brain drained out, could go and like be a foreman on the oil rigs or something like that, or be a heavy, high level sort of like executive on these in these companies, in these oil and gas companies. That's the one thing that continues to be the sort of like never ending, like singularly focused goal, even though they have all this other noise that they're making along the way, is to create essentially what is a colony that produces oil and gas. Which, by the way, who is affected by the impact of oil and gas in Louisiana, more than Louisiana, or more than our neighbors in Texas, or our neighbors in Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi, who, I mean, Florida just had one of the craziest hurricanes I had ever seen. One that just goes west to east, just like hurricanes just pop up like mushrooms in the Gulf now. It's so crazy. That has never been the case before.
Yeah, once in 100-year storms happen 2 or 3 times a year.
Every year, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the point that you're making is what I'm driving to, is that these policies and these laws are intended to create workers.
It's class war. It's class war.
It's intended, and so this goes back to the very beginning of what we started, when Sam Cedar said that we had a C minus democracy, like, starting 400 years ago. And again, I'm first generation American, so I look at America from an outside perspective. I've always identified as being Moroccan. I've always identified as being the other, and so I've always looked at the U.S. and America from an outside perspective. And I just have to say that our country, I'm an American, I was born here.
Sure.
Our country just isn't into us. It does not care for the people. It was created for the strong. It was created by the rich. It was created to keep the rich rich, and it was created to keep the poor poor. And these are things that I've been saying for years and years and years. But now I think people are seeing it for the first time. I think COVID opened up a lot of our eyes. At COVID, we had the highest incidence of mortality, we had the highest prevalence of cases and mortality, and we had the highest incidence and prevalence of mortality. So we had cases,
we're number one,
and mortality 4 times over. We're number one. And if you think about that, that was largely because people didn't care. We don't care. Why do we not care for one another? Because isn't this rugged Western independence, we're the frontier. I think there's a certain element to that, but I think it's founded in racism. I think that if you look at the founding of this country, it was the stealing of lands from First Nation peoples. And then when you look at how the country was built, it was built on the backs of kidnapping, murder, rape, and torture. And so we never had a reckoning with it. You know this, I had a family member die last year in Germany. That's where he lived. And when you look down in Germany, in Berlin, particularly where I was, but it's the rest of Germany, there are plaques in homes, tiny little plaques, maybe the size of my iPhone, kind of held horizontal. There are little plaques that say the name, the age, the sex of the individual who was taken out of that building, and then what concentration camp they were sent to, and then what day they likely died. Now that's a reckoning. That's how you get through to this. But we refuse to do it here. We still have yahoos walking around with effing Confederate flags. And they say, "Oh no, man, it's just we're remembering the heritage and what other crap that people are saying." Come on, stop with the gaslighting already. Like, if there's anything, it's just a constant just say what you guys want to do. You want to make this country an autocratic country. Yes. If they did that, then you know what? Fail. If they did do it, they probably would still win because they still see it. You have Trump last week dancing, YMCA, doing his Trump dance. It's just he doesn't even they're not hiding it anymore. Just say it already. Say what you guys want to do. Think about this, Jeff. We took kids away from their families at the border, and they never set up a system for reunification. These children will forever never know who their parents are, and these parents will never see their children ever again because they ran from conditions that were so bad. Why? Conditions that this country has imposed upon them. It's our policies that make it so that people come here and they have their children taken away. This is stuff that Project 2025 is going to continue to do. And so I ask you, why is this race so close? Because
the Democrats didn't differentiate from any of that. What happened when it came to, and we have to wrap it up really quickly, but we can definitely continue this conversation on November 5th, when you can join us at the Broadside and WHIVLP 102.3 or listen anywhere in the world, WHIVFM.org/listen. But unfortunately, there is a consensus between the two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, where even on the things that the Democrats will hand wring about. Remember when the Democrats were like, "Oh no, Trump wants to build the wall and make things he wants to declare war on immigrants." The Democrats adopted that policy essentially, and were like, "Hey, Republicans, we adopted your policy. Do you agree to actually do it now?" And what did the Republicans do? They just "No, you idiots. You just came and assumed our position. And now we can be even more ridiculous and more radical." And the Democrats are just like, "Oh, shucks. Well, guess we'll make our election." The Democrats, again, this is the problem. It's a when you have one of those pump cars on the railroad, it takes two to tango. It takes two to make it happen, and they're moving in the same direction. It's just that there's a little bit of a back and forth there. We do 100%. Have to jump. Anything you want to say on the way out, MarkAlain, Dery?
No, I was just going to say it's exactly what you were saying. It's just like when the vice president was first asked on the campaign trail, how does she differentiate from Biden? She says, I don't differentiate. I'm not going to do anything differently. So that goes exactly to the point that you were making.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for listening. MarkAlain, Dery, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, buddy.
We're gonna have to have you on here more frequently because this was a great conversation.
Would love that.
And thank you to everybody for listening. This has been Good Morning Comrade. We love you. Bye-bye. This is WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3.